Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian own, not to control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate that. We definitely got the normal Tuesday episode, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. This is the vault, episode 297. What makes a good trustee? Definitely wanted to do this episode because trustees always say, what can I gauge myself against, Trust Christian? What can I gauge myself against? What are the metrics that I can utilize to measure myself as a trustee, Trust Christian? What are these metrics that, we can utilize to measure ourselves? So today we're going to talk about these metrics, and we're going to make a little ancillary joke about the fact that we had to break out one of the manuals of greatness here, and really just kind of go over this in this episode. So appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Here we go. Let's talk about it. This is episode 297. What makes a good trustee? Appreciate Salt Lake City for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out Salt Lake City. This was a very requested episode because so many trustees say, what's the metrics we can measure ourselves by? How do we know if we're doing right? How do we know if we're doing wrong? And so we're going to go over some of the things that the trustees bring up so eloquently, so often. The first thing is what makes a good trustee is they don't rely on their memory. They always write it down. And it's so crazy. Uh, this is one of the first principles we go over with our trustees. You can have too little minutes, but you can never have too many minutes. And so having too much information and the complete records cost you little, but having too little information could spell for disaster. And this is, something that trustees ask about a lot when they come through about the minutes. When should they do a minute? When should they not do a minute? Things of that nature. Shout out to appreciate Memphis, Tennessee for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out to Memphis, Tennessee, where they have some incredible barbecue in Memphis, Tennessee. Once again, you do not rely on your memory. That's what makes a good trustee is you always write it down. You have a pen and pad. This is the mark of a good trustee. You create the minutes. We were talking to one of our mentors actually yesterday, and the mentor said, it costs you nothing to literally just go and write down a few notes about what your view is on the world that day, what your view is of the market that day, what your view is as a trustee that day. It could be 3 to 5 sentences, but that little bit allows you at the end of the week to go back and say, wow, this is what I was thinking Monday. This is what I was thinking Tuesday. This is what I was thinking Thursday. Oh, this is what I was thinking 2 weeks ago. And guess what? I'm thinking about it again. That's the mark of a good trustee. That's what makes a good trustee. Next thing, you don't operate in shoulds. They don't work. You don't operate in coulds. You don't do the shoulds and the coulds. We don't play the shoulds and the coulds game. Appreciate South Carolina for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out to South Carolina for tuning in live, listening to replay. There's only a few places in the world called South Carolina, and there's one in the United States, and it's called South Carolina. It's a beautiful place in the world. South Carolina is, so shout out to South Carolina. What makes a good trustee? They don't operate in what's possible, they operate in what's probable. You don't operate in shoulds and coulds. Those are past tense words and words that have no meaning to the trustee that's diligent, to what the good trustee does. The good trustee eliminates these words like try, The good trustees are focused on their language. That's what makes a good trustee. Is their language, their ability to utilize language. Number 3, they understand and implement the information that they receive. Now, this is a very critical step because this is where we separate the men from the boys, the women from the girls. This is the reality. This is decision making time. There's never an easy time to make a hard decision. Once again, there's never an easy time to make a hard decision. So what makes a good trustee is you make the hard decisions. You got to get uncomfortable. This isn't, oh, trust Christian. Well, why do I have to be uncomfortable, trust Christian? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's think about this. If you weren't passed along trusteeship from the previous generation, you're having to learn tough-minded management of assets. Now you're looking to do the impossible, which is send assets from one generation to the next unencumbered, in the correct position. Own nothing, control everything. Understanding and implementing the information that you receive immediately. You have to be able to understand, adopt it, and implement the information that you receive. People say we're in the information age, but how many people can implement all the information that they have? That's financial worthwhile. There's never an easy time to make a hard decision. Number 4, begin to continue to improve your professional skills and understanding the administering of the trust. Let's read that again. Begin and continue your professional skills and understanding of administering the trust. That's where we are, of course. How many people are, investing in their private education? Are you more focused on, oh man, trust Christian, I got to be in trust? Or are you focused on getting your private trustee game up? Are you coming to the private workshop for private trusteeship to learn private trusteeship? Or are you coming because, oh man, I just need to be in trust? Is that what it is? Because there's many people that are in trust and they don't know what's going on. And then there's people that are trustees and they have to know what's going on. This is why wealth was passed along from one generation to the next. Because someone had to say this is where the buck starts and this is where the buck stops. Your professional skills, of course, you got to improve. You got to go to continuing education programs. You got to go to high net worth investor conferences, forums or not, or otherwise. You have to go to these charitable foundation galas. Why not? That's what a trustee's doing. Whether it's for college, whether that's for a hospital, whether that's for a library, whether that's for a private family situation. What makes a good trustee is you improving your education. Now think about it. How can the trust ever outgrow the trustee? The trustee's got to be educated because the trust can never outgrow the trustee's capabilities. Carefully plan each transaction beforehand. It's much easier to do the right thing the first time than to go back and fix it later. So this is where we get people that come to the vault and they say, oh man, trust Christian, I need to get this situation done, taken care of ASAP. Well, did you carefully plan the transaction beforehand? Because this isn't going to be ideal for you either if you're doing 11-hour transfers. It's much easier to do the right thing the first time than to go back and fix it. That goes into even doing the minutes. So of course you got to carefully plan out the transaction. How many people are going to do the minute on the front end? Oh, they're going to have to do the minute on the back end. No, every great business has to do the minute on the front end because that's how business gets done. There has to be an offer in order for there to be a buyer. Transactions have to be planned out well in advance. This is where trustees come all the time and they say, Trust Christian, please tell me the truth. Tell me when you say plan out the transactions, you're talking about the entire situation, right? What happened to you planning out your day as a trustee every day for the trust? Do you plan out every day? Do you plan out every week? Do you plan out every month? Do you plan out every quarter? Do you plan out every year? Because that's what a good trustee's doing. A good trustee has a vision for the future and has a plan to implement that right now, here and now. Hmm. But how much is this plan, this part of the implementation of what makes a good trustee forgotten? Well, of course it's going to be forgotten. Why? Because most people don't plan out their lives. So how is it going to be any different for trusteeship going from one generation to the next? Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a trend. This isn't a fad. This is an elite category. That's who's doing this. Trusteeship is an elite category. So yes, you plan out the schedule every day, every week. Next one. Decide, once you've decided on the correct course of action, implement it. Don't procrastinate. We're going to see rule number 2, which is get rid of shoulds and could haves. No should haves, no could haves. You're focused on implementation of a course of action via a plan. Ladies and gentlemen, we already knew that asset management requires you to be a numbers cruncher, a risk analyzer. What do you think the analysts are doing on the public side? They're sharing their risk analysis. What is your risk analysis? As a trustee, you have to be able to calculate a system. This is why we have the management program. This is why we have the trustee training program. It's to train trustees into a position where they can manage with a course in the plan of action. If they're not implementing that strategy, if they are, then we share with them how there is a plan in place with trusteeship because the contract makes the law, and so they're just being a trustee of the contract. Simple as that. Next one, number 7. You got to maintain privacy. Don't disclose any more company business than is absolute necessary. That's what a good trustee does. It's so funny because a lot of trustees, they come in, we'll drop this jewel in the public because we know people aren't talking about it in the public. So we're going to drop the jewel because we can drop the jewel. The jewel is very, very simple. On the public side, even on the private side, trustees sign non-disclosures with the trust that they're trustees over. Why wouldn't they? It's standard operating procedure. If for any position or any entity to want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement, you do that on any public platform when you give up your privacy. But what happens when you're in a restricted contract now? A privacy agreement. What makes a good trustee? That's what makes a good trustee. Somebody that knows how to maintain the privacy because everybody doesn't need to even know that you're a trustee. But what makes a good trustee is they're able to have the team in place. They're able to maintain privacy for the entity if it's a private one. Next one. Any business that deals with any currency has to file in that particular jurisdiction. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that this may be a foreign type conversation to a lot of people because obviously private trusteeship is definitely going to be very foreign. We're not going to deny that. But what makes a good trustee is knowing what jurisdiction they're in, whether they're in the public or whether they're in the private. So when we talk about this, you have to know that when you're in the public or in the private, there is a filing that's required for particular transactions and particularly business transactions and particularly the currency. That is the way the accounting is done is through the currency, and that's the way transferring of energy or appreciation for energy is conveyed at this point in time. And it should be handled with the proper accounting in that particular jurisdiction. Next one. As a trustee, you are not, and we repeat, are not doing business as a sole proprietorship, a corporation, a partnership, or an association. Now, this is a very critical step because so many people they don't know how to separate themselves from the trust as a trustee sometimes. And we always say, well, asset protection comes from asset separation. And remember, you can't be something that you didn't create. So as long as you didn't create it, you're not the creator of that particular entity. And so good trustees know how to do things at arm's length distance. They know how to do things, as a adverse party. This is what we're talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, as a trustee, making sure that you're signing in the proper capacity. So we're gonna be opening it up to questions here. Definitely wanted to bring some very potent information about what makes a good trustee. I mean, we could go through all the traditional business sense, but a lot of these things are just basic for trusteeship and what we say is trusteeship coming from a senior trustee perspective when we talk about trusteeship. So we definitely wanted to address this today. What makes a good trustee? Um, Keeping a schedule, having a system of accountability is very, very important. Always continuously learning, always making it a point to to be educating yourself and to get around people that are smarter than you. Very, very important. Uh, Investing in your private education comes first. That's what makes a good trustee. Understanding that as long as their capacity is limited, they can't implement strategies that they don't know about because they didn't invest in the strategy. Think about it. In the private sector, you're investing in the strategy. You're investing in learning the private proprietary process. That's what you're learning. That's what you get in the private sector. Is you're learning proprietary information. But how many people are investing in their private education to get that proprietary education? Well, what makes a good trustee is they plan things out. I mean, all the things that we went through today. A good trustee gets with other people and trust because they understand that you can work with other people. It's interesting because so many people oh, the tax law has changed. The tax law has changed. The tax law hasn't changed in the private sector at all. In the public sector, it's going to change all the time because that's legislation, and you all know that, the listeners that are traditional listeners to the vault. So, the private sector is perfectly fine. The public sector is obviously where you're looking at the different things change. And so the private sector, obviously you want to get with someone that is in the private sector. You guys obviously know where you've heard that at first, but on the back end of that, you all know where it's not that easy to just Google a private attorney. If that's the case, we encourage you all Google private attorney, Google private accountants. These people that understand double bookkeeping, entry for accounting and things of that nature. Everybody's so spooked out when we even go to the wealth conferences. People be so spooked out about taxes and stuff like that. But then at the same time, we got to end up featuring people that are the accountants, that are the lawyers. It's like these people are supposed to be in the same room as the business managers, but somehow there's a discrepancy. Why? Because the trustees, the asset managers, have more of a bigger scale view than just the accountant or just the lawyer, which are pigeonholed into one particular perspective. So what makes a good trustee is being able to know how to communicate with all the parties, have a solid team, and execute trusteeship, knowing that they don't have to do everything themselves. You don't have to draft every contract as a trustee. You can have other parties do so. You can maneuver in a specific way. And so, trustees are people that, when we look at the senior trustees, they're all about doing all of the keys to wealth, which is protecting, preserving, growing, and passing it along. And that's bottom line. And that's just the bona fide truth of the situation. It's very, very simple. The process is very simple for themselves. Usually senior trustees are going to keep it very, very simple. They know simple returns, basic returns are really good. You ask the average person, is 25% return on capital good? The average person would say 25% on capital is good. So, if you're giving anybody somewhere where you're giving them annually, 25, 35% annually on capital, a lot of people are going to be really, really thankful for that, especially people that have a lot of bread, people that have a lot of capital, that that have a lot of capital, that have over $1 million, $10 million, $30 million. For you to tell them they're gonna give you any portion of their money, and you're gonna almost give them a quarter back pretty much every year for the next 4 years. They're like guaranteed a hedge against inflation and the fact that the money's gonna grow, in 4 years. And so, those type of things are out there right now, minimum for sure. And then there's obviously things that are going to be a lot better. Trustees obviously can identify those things, be able to position themselves. Um, Even dealing with some people, recently, and we were talking about just asset management skills. They were really asking about more of risk management skills, and we were just talking to them about, as a good trustee, it's so crazy. No one ever asked, what are some of the hard lessons that you've had to learn? What are some of the real, faux pas that you've had in trusteeship? And it's so interesting because, like, as a trustee, people are so fascinated with the private. As one of the mentors said, people are enamored with the private, in private sector. Oh, want to be in trusteeship, but yeah, they want to be in trusteeship. But what happens when you get over there and you have to execute? Um, risk management skills, and you're making mistakes. How do you recover from those mistakes? See, the mentors, when we would sit down and have breakfast and lunch with them, or any type of meeting with them, they would always talk to us about risk management, asset management, probabilistic outcomes, things of that nature. And these type of conversations aren't necessarily happening in every traditional business school, or conversations in general. But I mean, that is exactly what is going on. Is it has to be a conversation of possible outcomes that you may or may not encounter. Even right now, just encountering some things, in trusteeship, and saying, "Wow, what happens when you have to update the records? How fast are you to do that? Are you doing that immediately? Are you updating your notes immediately? Because that neglect almost can spill over into other areas of your life. But to do exactly what one of the mentors said yesterday, which is to literally just write it down immediately, and that just shows that whether you're utilizing the technology tools of like a cell phone or some type of computer or something of that nature, but you're immediately taking a note. Or even if you're using some type of notepad, like you always have a notepad on you or a book or something, and you always write down your ideas and things of that nature. Um, that's what makes a good trustee, is somebody that is in that zone where they are, making sure that they're taking notes, always looking to be progressive in their thought process. Once again, getting around people that are considered to be smarter than them in various different fields, things of that nature. Is called stewardship, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, good stewardship is obviously going to be reflected in good trusteeship. So somebody that is able to be a service to the trust. And people always say, "Well, I don't know what I'm bringing to the table. I don't know what I bring to the table." What do they say? I got to figure out what I'm bringing to the table. It's like, well, what were you doing on the public side? You can take that and do that in the private sector, and now you just have more additional responsibility. But that's what we see a lot of people end up quivering under, is the fact that they have to be responsible. And we see parties right now in the private sector that uh, you know, everybody has to end up, doing obviously what they're gonna do. So, we see different things going on in the private sector just as we see them on the public sector. Um, and obviously everybody just has to make their decisions, that yeah, you got to be willing to make some tough decisions as trustees, because as a trustee, it's not about you. It's always about the trust. It's always about the contract. It's always about, are you doing your job as a fiduciary? Um, you know, with filing anything in any jurisdiction, are you able to operate privately in international jurisdictions? Are you, quote unquote, what people consider, attached to any particular entity as a private citizen, or are you a public citizen? You guys can Google private citizen. A lot of people don't want to talk about private citizens. We could easily do an episode about private citizens, but a lot of people, they don't want to talk about who private citizens are. But all your wealthy elite are definitely going to be private citizens, and that's pretty simple. Why? Because that means you're not in a public office now. But how many people are really private citizens, but they're not holding public office? So we definitely can do an episode about that. But what makes a good trustee is knowing what capacity they're in. Are you in the public sector or private sector, and what capacity are you in? So, what makes a good trustee? So easy to be a good trustee if you just get mentored to be a good trustee. Once you get mentored to be a good trustee, you just continue to move forward with your life. You continue to do what the mentors mentored you. We always talk about, people say, "How do you learn trusteeship, Trust Christian? How'd you get it?" Well, we have mentors. You either get it through a mentor, or do you get it through a manual? You got a document, or you got a is the there's either a document that taught you trusteeship, or a family that taught you trusteeship. The mentorship comes from a family. You either got a father or somebody else. Somebody else taught you that. And bottom line, we had that. We had father-like figures that taught us trusteeship, and it wasn't just taught, it was shown in lifestyle, and then you move into obviously the execution of that. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. It's always good to have you all come through on the vault. Feel free to type a question into the chat before we get off. Other than that, episode the vault, episode 297, what makes a good trustee? A trustee that's willing to be a leader, not be a follower. Especially a good trustee. Not just the average trustee, but a good trustee. That trustee wants to make the tough decisions. That trustee wants to take risk to grow the assets of the trust. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Once again, this is the vault. What makes a good trustee? Hmm. Anything else before we get off of here? For what makes a good trustee? We can sit here and say, oh, all the verbal, the legal jargon, the cases, and all that good stuff, but there's always the things that are intangible, the things that keep in your word. That's those type of things. Being accountable when you break it. That's what it's about. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Feel free to reach out, Christian at trustchristian.com. For all the trustees, feel free to reach out. We got our workshop planned for May 1st. If you all want to come to the workshop uh, May 1st and you're not a trustee, feel free to reach out, Christian at trustchristian.com. We'll definitely share the location, but feel free to reach out, Christian at trustchristian.com, and we'll get you the details to the event. And you all can look forward to moving forward with us. You all enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.